What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another WoW Dragonflight Alpha video. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at the Unholy Death Knight talent tree. And we're going to be doing that to basically look at it and get a feel for what's going on in the tree, what's available to create a open world content sort of build, good for leveling, questing, world quest grinding, that kind of stuff. If you haven't watched my first Death Knight talent tree video on the Blood Death Knight, I'd encourage you to go check that out. In there, I kind of go over the class portion of the talent tree in depth, which I'm going to skip out on doing here just to save some time. We're going to mainly focus on the unholy portion of the tree. So all that being said, I would encourage you guys to please let me know via comments, views, likes, etc., whether or not you're enjoying this series and you want to see more videos for Dragonflight after the alpha. I'm really using your feedback here as a gauge to decide whether or not I want to come back and continue making videos for Dragonflight post-alpha, or whether I just kind of want to make these alpha videos and call it good. So it's up to you guys to let me know, seriously, every video, whether or not you want to see this content. So that being said, let's jump in and check things out. We are spec'd Unholy. We've got our talent tree up. We get Raised Dead by default, which is probably good because we're going to be able to upgrade it since we're Unholy. This is the spec I've had the least playtime in, but I started playing it pretty significantly in Shadowlands while I played Shadowlands. So I'm excited to see what's available here as we get into things. But before we get into the talent tree, we're going to pull out some of the stuff we have in our spell book without putting any talent points in at all. So we got our Death and Decay, we got our Death Coil, we got Death Grip, we've got our Raised Dead with our Ghoul, Rune Strike, Rune Forging, and then we have our passives. So we have Dark Sucker, which when we kill an enemy that gives us experience or honor, our next Death Strike within 20 seconds is going to be free and heal for an additional 10% maximum health. Then we have our Mastery Dreadblade, increases the damage of our minions and our shadow damage. Now, as we go through here, I'm not going to dive deep into every single ability and read them all out and everything. I'm going to assume you have a working knowledge of Death Knight, and just kind of only cover the stuff that I need a refresher on, or the stuff that looks like maybe new. Any going in depth and getting really specific about abilities and their use and stuff is going to be saved for future videos, that are actual guides. So that being said, let's go ahead and jump in, and we're going to go through the class tree real quick. I've done this 2 times now, so I have a fairly good idea of kind of what we want to pick up. We've got the unholy stuff, or sorry, the frost stuff over here on the side. We've got a good amount of blood tanking stuff over here, and then this side appears to be the unholy side, but kind of going through here, there's stuff we want in all the trees. So we want to grab Chains of Ice and get our Mind Freeze for Interrupt. We want to grab Death Strike to have that, and then also grab Death's Advance. And then over here, we're going to want to get Cleaving Strikes. Now from here, we can kind of change things up a little bit because we are on Unholy. So I think here having Enfeeble, which is not yet implemented, is going to be good. So that's going to allow us to reduce the movement speed and the damage they deal, enemies deal to us when our ghouls attack them. And then we're going to want to go into Brittle. Our diseases, which we have plenty of, have a chance to weaken the enemy, causing our attacks to deal increased damage to them. So that's going to get us into here. We do potentially want to jump in and get Wraithwalk, but we're going to jump in here first, and we're going to grab our Death's Reach, and we're going to grab Unholy Ground. Now from here, we could potentially get Lichborn, which I think is a little more viable in Unholy than it is in the other specs, but I'm not super crazy about it. I'd rather get our Avoidance and grab Wraithwalk for the movement speed ability. After this, it's kind of up to us what we want to do here. We have to spend 6 more points. I think there's quite a few points we can get by going through here. I think grabbing Permafrost for some extra defense is pretty solid. Then we can go for Leech, or we can go for Icebound Fortitude. I do like having the defensive cooldown there. Crit Strike chance. Reduce the cooldown of Icebound Fortitude so we can use it more frequently. I think we grab the Leech. And we could grab Asphyxiate for a stun. I don't mind that. Or we can Let's see. Roll out the leech and let's improve our stamina by 20%. Give ourselves some extra health. So now we have 6 points to put in here on the bottom. We have been picking up like Horn of Winter, mainly on the other 2 specializations. But that's because, you know, we just didn't have things over on this side that we were super interested in getting. I think that pretty much is going to be the case. We could potentially improve the effects of our rune forging, but I haven't really looked at rune forging yet to know whether or not like this is something we really want to invest points in. I think, you know, actually getting Will in the Necropolis on a DPS spec is not that bad. But generally speaking, I want to pick up Horn of Winter, which means we're going to go through here. I think we've just been picking up like Runic Corruption is kind of like the default into Horn of Winter. And we can reduce the cost of our Death Strike, but we're mainly going to be using Death Strike to when we get the proc from our passive ability. So we got 4 points left. We're not going to be like too crazy about this. Let's go ahead and we're going to grab Soul Reaper. All right. Yeah, we'll grab Soul Reaper. So let's apply this. Take a look at what we got. So Soul Reaper is one we're going to use. It's basically kind of like an execute ability. We got our Wraith Walk. We got our Horn of Winter. We got our CC, our defensive. We got our movement speed. We got our other defensives here, the ones we won't use. And then, yeah, so it's basically kind of looking like this. So we didn't really add a whole lot here. We're basically going to Runic Strike into Death Coil. Throw Soul Reaper out as an execute. Death Strike to heal, and try to stand in our Death and Decay. So, Death Knights in general are not very exciting coming out the gate with just the class tree. Some classes actually have, like, moderately decent rotations. Death Knight is not really one of them. So, we really do have to get into the specialization tree to kind of get into that. So, we're going to look through here, and we're going to do it by checking out the active abilities that we can get first, which are the ones in these little squares here. Then we'll look at any choices we can get, which are the ones with the arrows. And then we'll look at the passives as we go through and kind of like do our builds. And the passives are the ones in the circles here. So we have to pick up Festering Strike. This is going to be our rune spender. That's going to put our wounds on the target and deal damage. Generally, the higher up on the tree abilities are, the more important, the more core they are to the build. So it's okay to take a bunch of active abilities at the top of the tree. So then we have our Scourge Strike. This is our rune spender that bursts the Festering Wounds that we put on the target with Festering Strike. And then we also have Raise Dead. So this replaces our current Raise Dead and gives us the permanent ghoul. We're going to want to get both of these. Then we have Outbreak. So Outbreak is going to be a plague that affects all nearby enemies, and it's going to deal damage over time to them. From there, we can ramp off to Epidemic, which causes the virulent plagues to flare up and deal damage to the enemy and enemies around them. We've got our Dark Transformation here, which is our big steroid crazy pump for our ghoul. We have Army of the Dead, the giant 8-minute cooldown, summon a legion of ghouls, blow apart your enemy ability. Super cool, but also super fun to avoid in open world content because of the 8-minute cooldown, unless we miraculously find a way to drastically reduce that cooldown, which we may, so we'll have to see. Then we have Apocalypse, a little bit better, 1.5-minute cooldown that does shadow damage to the enemy and burst up to 4 wounds, and summons the Army of the Dead Ghoul for 15 seconds for each wound that we burst. Much more viable in open world content. We also have Unholy Blight, 45-second cooldown. Puts a swarm around you, which infects targets with your plague. And an unholy disease as well that deals additional damage. Very nice. And we have Unholy Assault. Strike your target, dealing shadow damage, infecting them with 4 Festering Wounds, and sending you into a frenzy that increases your haste. And over here we have Summon Gargoyle. So that's going to summon a gargoyle to bombard the target on a 3-minute cooldown. Just looking at the active abilities here, I'm not crazy about the Epidemic. Not really crazy about using that. I do want to get Outbreak. Dark Transformation, super solid. Apocalypse is good. Unholy Blight is really good as well. And then Unholy Assault is pretty cool too. So I'm kind of leaning more towards the middle and left sides of the trees, just based on what I'm seeing here, with possibly popping over to pick up Unholy Blight. But I'm pretty sure we're just not going to have the points to get all this. So we're going to have to pick a direction that we want to go in and maybe get, you know, one of these or maybe a couple of the top level ones. So let's look at our choices. We only got 2 of them here in the middle. So the first one here is Defile. This replaces our Death and Decay, puts it on a 20-second cooldown. It causes our Scourge Strike to hit 4 targets. And then it will grow in size and deal increasing damage. So it's a way to take our Death and Decay from something we just kind of cast all the time, and we could just pump it up. Alternatively, we have Unholy Pack, Dark Transformation, which is our, you know, ghoul pump. Creates an Unholy Pack between you and your pet, which puts flaming chains between you. I love this ability. It's fantastic. I'm a big fan of the Flame Chain Unholy Death Knight. And then here we have Ebon Fever. The plague deals more damage over time in half the duration. Or Bursting a Festering Wound deals more damage and deals damage to nearby targets. So this is good stuff. This is really good stuff. I'd like to pick up Unholy Pact, and I'd like to pick up Ebon Fever. So middle is looking really strong just based off of that. So let's go ahead and kind of head down these trees. All right, so we got to spend 4 points up here. Now, we already know I kind of don't want to go off to this Epidemic route, but let's take a look at this cluster over here and kind of see if there's anything super important in here. So we have reduced runic power cost of Death Coil. That's solid. Raise Dead summons an additional minion. Also solid. Ghoul's Claw attacks have a chance to cause a Festering Wound. Also solid. And then Soul Reaper Scourge Strike, Festering Strike, and Death Coil deal 20% additional damage to enemies below 35% health. Pretty good as well. So everything in that cluster is good. Unfortunately, I really feel like this middle is still pretty strong. But if this left side is not as strong as the right side, maybe we do go that direction. We kind of come down enough to pick up like Unholy Blight, and then maybe call it good. So let's look at the left side. So we have your auto attacks have a chance to make your next Death Coil cost no runic power. Absolutely going to pick that up. Here we have Festering Wounds has an increase of applying Festering Wounds. Not yet implemented, but this would be a 60% chance, I'm assuming, of applying 3 additional Festering Wounds. That's really good wound generation. I would like that quite a bit, I think. Festering Strike and Festering Wound damage is increased, and that can lead us into Sudden Doom, triggering 15% more often and accumulating up to 2 charges. Those are also very good if we want to go for a Death Coil-focused build. Festering Wound pops generate additional runic power. Scourge Strike damage is increased. We get Clawing Shadows, which will replace Scourge Strike, turns it into a 30-yard ability that deals damage and causes a Festering Wound to burst. Okay. Moving down, Death and Decay damage has a 10% chance to apply a Festering Wound. Bursting a Festering Wound has a chance to give you Runic Corruption. Overall, I like this side of the tree better than I like this side over here. What does that get us? Like, we get Unholy Blight here, which I'm a fan of, and Apocalypse, which I do want to get. This gives us Death Coil, debilitates your enemy, applying Death Rot, causing them to take increased shadow damage. If Death Coil consumes Sudden Doom, it applies 2 stacks. That's fine, but yeah, I don't love it. Over here, popping a Festering Wound increases your strength. Dark Transformation also increases the attack speed and damage of you and your monstrosity. That's pretty cool. Diseased enemies take 3% increased damage from you per disease they're affected by. All enemies within 8 yards take 10% increased damage from all your minions. Death Coil reduces the cooldown of Apocalypse and Army of the Dead. Apocalypse and Army of the Dead also summon a Magus of the Dead, who hurls frost bolts and shadow bolts at your foes. Okay, so if I was going to go Army of the Damned here, I would probably want to do that while going into the sort of Death Coil heavy build, which I feel is going to be kind of over here on the left-hand side, right? Like we pick up Sun Doom, we go in, we're going to pick up Death Rot into like Army of the Damned. And then we come down here, we get like damage dealt by Death Coil, reduces the cooldown of Dark Transformation, versus over here, Death Coil deals 20% additional damage and seeks out one additional nearby enemy. All good stuff. We're definitely going to come down the middle. So the question is, do we want to come down with Festering Strike and Wound Damage, or the chance to apply additional wounds? I don't know. Since this isn't implemented, we can't really test this out. So I think we just increase the Festering Strike and Wound Damage here. Dark Transformation. Like I said, I want to get Unholy Pact. I also want to get Ebon Fever. And then from here, I don't know, we're going to go probably invest into one of these. So we can reduce the cooldown on Dark Transformation, which is what I want to do, because I want to have Dark Transformation up more often. Now, we still have to spend 7 points, and I like going this route over here, where we get an additional skeletal minion. We get the chance for our minions to apply Festering Wounds. I don't know that we need the execute. It's probably okay to have an open world content. But do we want it over like Sudden Doom? That's 1 point. Sudden Doom. I think we do that and that. And then from here, we're going to get Apocalypse. I want to get Unholy Blight. And then the question becomes, where do we go from here? So we have the option of increasing damage to enemies that have our diseases. Just based off of this, they're going to have Festering Wound, Virulent Plague. I guess Festering Wound is not a disease technically, so we're going to have Virulent Plague. Let's see, what else? Unholy Blight. So we could get 12% increased damage based off of that. Not sure if we can pump that up more. That's 12% increased damage though. But I like going this like full Dark Transformation build. So I think 2 points into Ghoulish Frenzy, and then we have 1 point left. Like I said, like we could pick up Army of the Damned. We did end up picking up Sudden Doom, which is really kind of the key to getting that to work. We missed out on Death Coil applying Death Rot to an enemy. And we missed out on Death Coil dealing additional damage and seeking out another enemy. But we did pick up the Sudden Doom. We picked up Sudden Doom triggers. We picked up Death Coil, reducing the cooldown of Dark Transformation, and we picked up the reduced runic power cost of Death Coil. So I think we can go Army of the Damned. Alright, so let's apply this. So the whole idea here is basically we just want to pop Dark Transformation. And then we want to use the chains from the Dark Transformation to deal damage to our enemy. And then we basically want to pop off on Death Coil to reduce the cooldown of Dark Transformation. So with that, we're going to want Sudden Doom, right, to trigger, which triggers off auto attacks, so there's nothing we can really do to help that. The runic power is going to be reduced, so we're going to be able to trigger Death Coil a little more often. And that's pretty much it on the Death Coil side of things. That said, we can pop our Apocalypse as well because our Death Coils and Epidemic, which I don't believe we picked up. I don't think. Oh, we did pick it up. Okay. Epidemic will also. So Epidemic is basically the AoE alternative to Death Coil, essentially. So if we're in an AoE situation, we're like using Epidemic most of the time. But generally, we're going to be using Death Coil. So Death Coil is going to reduce the cooldown of Army of the Dead as well. So we can pop like Army of the Dead, since it's on a 1.5 minute cooldown. Pop Dark Transformation, use the chain to burn things. Then we're going to want to get to Death Coil, which we're going to need to build up runic power to do that. We're going to do that by Festering striking our target, making sure we have Outbreak, which is not going to deal, it's not going to generate any runic power for us. But that's okay, we want the Virulent Plague to be on there. Not to mention our ghouls can apply the Festering Wounds as well. So we'll probably Apocalypse, Dark Transformation, Outbreak, then go into Festering Wounds. And then we can Scourge Strike to burst wounds as we go. We also do have Unholy Blight on a 45-second cooldown, which we can pop to stack Virulent Plague in an AoE situation instead of trying to manually stack Virulent Plague with Festering Strike. We can pop that instead. That's pretty much it. So let's set up our bar and kind of test this out a little bit. Also, we do have our Soul Reaper executability if we need it. Alright, so Festering here. Death Coil is going to be our main. Got Unholy Blights. We've got Apocalypse. Alright, we've got Outbreak, which we're going to want to cast. We do have Epidemic. Alright, so it's going to be something like this. So we need to summon our guys. Alright, so can't do that yet. Why not? Oh, because we need Festering Wounds on the target. Okay, so let's go ahead and Dark Transformation. Right, we get that going. We get our Outbreak going. We're going to want to Death Coil every time it pops up to reduce the cooldown. Keep our Outbreak up. Alright, so it looks like we can stack up to 6 Festering Wounds on the target. So once we're, you know, above like 3, we probably just want to start popping them. And then we can build them back up as we need to. Alright, Dark Transformation again. We can pop Apocalypse now that we have 6 Festering Wounds, so we can pop the maximum amount. We're up to 6 wounds again. Go ahead and start popping these. Wow, we jumped up to 5 wounds. Like, we're not even like in a Death and Decay. So I'm pretty sure, like, we just kind of melt things with that. We'll have to test it out in open world content. This is kind of like Assassination Rogue, where it's hard to judge the numbers we're putting out because it is such a dot-based build. But like, we can give it a shot. Let's take a look. So Fire Chain, it's hitting for 3 to 6. Like, that's pretty like solid for a dot. Outbreak, ticking for about the same. Death Coil's hitting for a K, which is alright. Runic Strike hitting for 13. Death Coil is hitting for about 1,000 on a non-crit. Bursting a Wound, that was about 1,200 damage without crits. So yeah, like, I think these numbers are solid because they all stack up, right? So we have like Outbreak. We're gonna apply some things there. We'll Death Coil, which start popping. You know, we've got our ghouls that are gonna be attacking and applying Festering Wounds as well. Yeah, like, I think that's gonna work out fine. We'll have to, you know, take it into the open world and test that out in the sea, which is what we're gonna do in a future video. So look forward to that. I think that's gonna do it for this video, though. Be sure to let me know in the comments section what you think. And if you want to see more videos like this, if you're enjoying the series, if you want to see more videos for Dragonflight Beyond the Alpha, all that kind of good stuff. Thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you on the next one.